Toast bread, avocado tastes best waking up in your bed.
So, okay, we're talking about Ginger Chew. It was like August, I think, of September of 2020.
Yeah, middle of September.
So it's been about a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty cool. I went back and like looked at some photos and like went through the session to kind of like remind myself of all the little fun things we did. But yeah, I guess maybe first we can talk a little bit about before we even started recording A Touch. I know Ben had sent me a bunch of demos of all the songs, and it was sort of like this album, even the order and sort of the experience of how it flows from song to song. There was a lot of work put in before we started recording on y'all's end with that.
Yeah.
So I don't know do you have anything in particular about this song that when you were writing it or arranging something? We can listen to the demo in a second.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, I think this song was like, it was like the last in the succession of songs that kind of grew out of that centralized like riff structure that you hear in like Orange Blue and other things. At least writing wise, when I was approaching it, I was basically trying to create like a opposite version of Orange Blue. Like,
cool.
You know, I was looking at Orange Blue, I was looking at the structure, how the energy of it, the words, how they flowed, and was trying to like invert it to have something more upbeat that also, you know, same kind of pre-choruses. That was my intent with writing it, and then once I kind of started down that road, it literally, I wrote the song in 5 minutes. It was the quickest thing ever. But it felt so like perfect in like a that was meant to happen kind of way. And I feel like calling back on the recording experience of this song in particular, there was many points along the progress where you and I both looked at each other and we were like, that just makes sense. Like it is supposed to be like that, because this song is like so straightforward and intentional, and just like, yeah, this is how this song sounds. There's no like question. It's just like it calls for this.
Yeah. I know that, jumping ahead a bit, even when we kind of set up like day one of recording this sort of like pre-pro / arrangement, like low impact setup, which I also have some tracks from and pictures from, which is kind of fun. And I know on some of the songs we made some pretty big moves with like
Roses in particular.
Yeah. Like things like, you know, tempos and like arrangement choices. And this is one of the songs that, even just listening back to the demo, like same thing. I think it was kind of like, this feels pretty good. Yeah. And like the tempo of it, the way the drums grooved, everything was like faster, slower is worse. Like this is a Goldilocks situation in a lot of ways. Yeah. Which is cool and kind of like a neat thing to listen to. I feel like a lot of times, like doing stuff like this, we'll listen back to the one that changed the most, you know?
Right.
But I think it's kind of neat to hear really there. You can really easily identify the things that are different in the recorded version from the demo version, because so many of the big picture things are very similar.
Right. Yeah. I listened to the demo yesterday and I was like, this is pretty much the same. Yeah. It's like cool. I was like, wow, we fucking nailed it, like right out of the gate with it. Like, exactly what we wanted.
Yeah.
And that allowed for the recording to really like fine tune each of those sounds to make it as perfect as it could be.
Yeah. I can say too, like for this song was like when you originally sent all the demos over, which I think was like May of 2020 or something like that. Like I remember going through all the songs and I was like, this is my favorite one, and it still is my favorite, because it was just like instantly the demos just like, this song just makes sense, like the riff and everything. So it's just so cool.
That's sweet.
Yeah. I'm stoked to listen to some of these the progress of how it kind of built up. On the demo, did you play drums or did Joe play drums? Joe played drums.
Yeah.
Cool.
Did you do that at Connor's, or was it?
Yeah, well, you had your GarageBand demo, and then I just took all those in the middle of the lockdown and stuff, and I convinced Connor to do all the demos, so we went to his place in Toms River, We would cut like 4 tracks there. And I think we did that twice or so for the course of the album.
Because I was gonna say the drumming sounds very in a similar world. You know, I would have been surprised if it had been done on a computer or
definitely,
something.
No, that was very helpful, and that was definitely the furthest extent I've ever took a demo. Was like Joe literally went to a studio to like do the drums because we wanted it. You know, we wanted to A, feel prepared, and B, like not leave room for like just you know when you like digitally demo drums, it's like, this is kind of how I hear it sound, but I'm just going to keep it in the back of my head of like how I really hear this sounding. Yeah. We didn't want to like, we had so much time too.
I was going to say, we had nothing but time. Yeah. So I remember getting the demo for this, like, I don't know, maybe February of 2020 or something like that. Or, no, March, because everything locked down. Yeah. And then we had the entire summer just to listen to these demos. So I think we went and probably demoed everything with Connor in July or something like that.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, I remember vividly having a few phone calls with you. It was just such a confusing period of time, and we had like been like, yeah, we're gonna do the album, and like, oh, we gotta wait, like stuff isn't safe
I guess
yet.
I can't see you.
Yeah. But it did end up working out pretty good the way we were able to do it. So.
I think it was perfect.
Yeah.
It gave us enough time to feel prepared, to not feel rushed. I think by the time we got here, we were like ready to do it.
Yeah,
which is great.
And also just noting that like before we actually went in the studio, I only met Ben the week before we went to the studio. Everything was completely over email, and it was just like we did like a few Zoom sessions, and it was just like I like this bass part, or like this whatever. So it was just like the whole thing was just unconventional until we got to the studio. So
but it's still effortless too.
Yeah, it just made sense everything.
Which is kind of a cool and unique thing too, even in the studio, is sort of like developing the identity of each person's voice on their instrument in a way that might, in other circumstances, have been in like a rehearsal space, but in this space it was in like a very more focused and just kind of a different energy.
It was one of the most pleasant and creative studio experiences I've ever had in my whole life, honestly, because we were like finding the identity of the band in that moment, you know? Yeah. Like, we literally had not played together at all, really.
And again, given the time period, too, I kind of forgot what was happening in the outside world.
Definitely.
We were totally just, like, locked in
on
this whole process.
But doing, like, 12-hour days for a week, whatever. I know you guys did 2 weeks, but just for us, it was just a week.
We went a little stir-crazy towards the end there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was good.
I remember coming back that second week.
To get to.
We both just lose our minds together.
Yep.
I like that, and I like that that's a specific kind of album too, like this sort of like identity finding album. You know, you get albums sometimes with bands or artists that are like, we have this very established identity and now we need to decide what we deviate from, what we don't. And this was just sort of like, you know, can be intimidating because there's a lot of options, like what all these directions we can go in. There's nothing super firm that would define anything or that we have to live in the shadow of in any way.
Exactly.
But I think that while sometimes that can be an intimidating thing, it was like everyone like just took it on.
Opportunistic.
Like, it's cool. So, all right, so first thing was this was recorded in the warehouse, which is a different studio that I have about 30 minutes from here. And we'll have pictures of it that we'll check out. Where we are now is just my spot at my house, but I think it's a nice, comfy place to listen to some stuff.
Sun's shining.
Let's do it.
I'm going to play some of this demo. I might skip around a little bit because we're going to listen to a lot of this song in different ways, but just to kind of hear the first thing that y'all heard and I heard.
It's the demo. Sounds good.
Oh, sorry, that was the demo and the master.
Okay, I was about to say, I was like,
we put slap on the
really
whole
good.
mix. That's
Even
cool.
still, that shit's lined up, man.
Yeah.
I had my last ginger chew after a week with you, love.
Yeah, I love that.
By the open blue, I'll sing a sunset tune for two, love.
Yeah.
So, these demos were all done in my Brooklyn apartment, which was like basically my bedroom, which was about the size of this rug, and I tried to find a trick to get as much like acoustic, natural room sound as I possibly could when I was doing vocals. In that I would record the acoustic part with my microphone interface, and then play it out of my computer and record my voice on my iPhone with the like sound of the song in it.
That's what you were doing?
That's what I was doing.
Really?
Yeah. And it was like so janky, but like the best. It was.
You were like sending these demos in your bathroom too. I remember.
Yeah.
It was just like a good sounding room.
It was all I had. I had this little box to like do this, but I just remember
That's cool.
doing that with my phone to like get the voice to sound natural.
Yeah. It sounds cool, and like kind of unlike a lot of demos you get, you know, where it's not like the super close like one mic thing. It's not like a voice memo, you know. Let me just skip around a little bit. Here's some of the drums that we were talking about that Joe had put on it.
Toast bread, avocado tastes best waking up in your bed.
Pretty similar.
Friend,
And
short and fused. Now I'm told that's in your room. Heard a lot about you.
cool. So I think these bigger parts are the parts where you can hear the biggest difference between what we ended up doing, and the intro is like
spot on,
similar, pretty cool. Cool. So let's kind of like dive in a little bit to what we were doing. One thing to note is that what we're listening to now is the like session where we last had it before it got sent off to mix. So there might be some tonal differences to the mix that Tim Piniella did. I got some info from him on he mixed it largely out of the box, meaning like not necessarily only relying on plugins.
Cool.
So it was cool. There's like a bunch of analog gear being used on everything, which so you know I can't like take a screenshot of his session. But when we get to each thing, I'll kind of refer to whatever he told me we did. But the first thing that's kind of interesting, and I discovered when I sorted through this session, was I have that pre-pro take of it,
I would love to hear that.
which is like not, you know, shockingly different than anything. But it's cool to hear. And we had, I think I have some pictures real quick here.
Then you were like in the vacuum room.
Yeah.
Just like you were in a different side.
Here, I'm just giving them all away right now. Here, no, this one. This is Joe with the pre-pro setup.
Woo! Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the drums are still in the same spot. They were in the studio. I just kind of mic'd them with like 6 or 7 mics or whatever, and just to be able to kind of bounce through everything. And then I think like you were near Joe, and then you were in an ISO, and would swap between acoustic or electric guitars depending on whatever the vibe was. So on this one, it looks like you played acoustic. So we're just going to listen to a second of this. Pretty cool.
There's no orange blue without you.
Snare.
Toast bread, avocado taste best waking up in your burning in a lullaby
Pretty cool. And these drums actually sound a lot more like the demo drums a little bit.
Yes.
They probably are the same drums, right?
Close. Yeah. I remember we used a Superphonic for this part.
Yeah, the snare I was thinking sounded very similar to the demo. So that was cool, and that was a luxurious thing to be able to do, but I really enjoyed that, especially for like, I remember specifically like Waiting on Me and songs like that. Like we made a lot of like, okay, let's play through it as a band, like even though there's overdubs coming, like let's hear it just in its rawest form. And be able to make like skeletal adjustments to it.
It was so helpful.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where it's like, it ate up a day, you know, of like a week and a half, but I think the payoff in
100%.
this scenario was definitely worth it. Especially considering, like hadn't spent a lot of time in a room together jamming the songs, just to be able to like feel out. This interesting things happens, in my opinion, when you do that. Especially with like session musicians or some where it's not just like a band that's been playing together for like 8 years, you kind of stop paying as much attention to what everyone else is doing specifically, and you just start to hear the parts that interact with you, and it kind of clears up some of the noise.
Yeah.
From just being able to be in like Logic or whatever and solo it and be like, oh, this one note,
Yeah.
you know, it's like, no, like, does this feel good? Like, I don't need to think as much about like, you know, each other's specific choices as macro choices.
And we kind of flipped that process 180 degrees in that we were like, this needs to feel good first, and then from there we will make the little things sound as best as they can.
Which I think for this style, like we were saying, was this identity finding thing. Was ended up being a good move.
For sure.
Yeah, so that's cool. We don't need to go too deep into that because we're basically listening to like 3 versions of a very similar thing. Yeah. But I thought that was neat, and I found it in there.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Cool. So after we did that and worked on it and decided it was largely cool to leave it the same, we did it kind of like drums. And correct me if I'm wrong. I'm trying to remember all this correctly, but we did drums, bass, you know, kind of the normal order, like guitars, and then I think we put vocals down not as the last thing because you had so much singing to do. Yeah. So I think we put vocals down probably before like certain overdubs.
I think we were the last like 3 or 4 days bouncing between guitar and vocals.
Yeah. It would just have been too much to have you sing like all these songs in 2 days. And it was a lot even considering, but I think at least giving 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, definitely.
Because there's a lot of harmony on the record. There's a lot of this cool thing that I think is kind of unique where you have the like, we'll get into it, like the lower lead vocal and a higher lead vocal, and they're not an octave. Yeah. They're kind of their own melodies that create harmonies. And
I think of you every time Kris and I sing that part in that song when we played together, because I remember having a moment where you were like, you know, these don't harmonize, and I was like, yeah, but do they need to? And you're like, no.
Yeah.
And it was like awesome.
It's kind of neat, and I kind of like, you know, sometimes you want to really direct the listener to something, and this is this nice moment where like I could see myself listening in the car singing either of these lead vocals, and it feels like the one. Yeah. You know?
For sure.
Which is a rare and interesting thing. And you have, I think there's a difference, which I'm getting ahead of myself. Your like low voice and your higher voice have such interesting timbral differences. Is timbral a word? Differences it is now. Differences in timbre that they kind of create to like characters when they're against each other. Yeah. So we can listen more closely to that, but
I think really nailed that on Waiting on Me too, which is like the intent.
And that's sort of like the thing for that song. That's the real like showcase, I think, of that technique that was developed.
We all love that song. Let's just
it's a great song. So we started with drums, so I'll keep the nerdiness in check, but we'll go a little nerdy.
I feel like this was the least nerdy out of all the songs.
Yeah, I don't
We
remember
weren't close
drums
opening
for the song,
doors
really.
with the mic.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
I just mean in terms of like listing.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
But you know, I have a thing where I always try and with anything, but especially drums, which are traditionally this like monolith of recording where you need to like everybody has their own tricks and secrets and you use all these mics and you're miking like 7 instruments being played as one instrument, but all of them, you know, becomes this like whole thing where everyone talks about miking drums. I always try and, when using lots of mics on something, like I want to use as little mics as I can to make it sound the way I want. You know, there's stuff that we won't go into with like phase and just like the more and more and more and more you try and add up, sometimes you can create problems for yourself. So I think we decided to go a little further than the pre-pro setup, but nothing crazy. It looks like we just had, you can see in the session, like 2 mics on the kick, snare top, snare bottom, both toms. We put a ride mic up, but we didn't use it in this song. But I think there was some song, usually I just do the 2 overheads.
Waiting around, I think.
I think we did that back to back. Yeah.
I think it was up and I recorded it, but it looks as though it's been unused. I usually don't mic hi-hat or ride. I try and get the cymbals sounding nice with 2 overheads, and I think that we just hit a point where we were like, we just need to hear more of the ride. So we did that. And then, overheads, rooms. The room there is amazing, and these room mics were used on many tracks that we'll get into. They're in the acoustic guitars and... the room.
How many room mics did we set up?
I had a pair.
Okay.
And I haven't used these in a minute since this, but I should, because I was listening to them like, these sound cool. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, okay. No, for drums, it was 2 ribbons, unmatched ribbons. It was a R121 and a Fathead. I guess when we switched to doing overdubs, I put 2 Dragonflies, which is this mic by Blue that have like crazy high output, which were just nice for like using room mics on something like an acoustic guitar, using to get it so much gain that there's like a high noise floor. So like, it was just nice to have these super hot mics like placed wide in the room. But yeah, this is the setup for the drums. It was a D12, like a solid state 47, both on kick. I have a picture of it. Used a 451 on snare. Wow, I did not know that. Cool. And then
We did at one point.
we did at one point. Is it not that?
No, I mean you knew that. At one
Oh
point.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm always surprising myself.
You just made it up when you wrote it down.
The snare bottom mic's an interesting thing. It's this mic called a E635A, which is a dynamic omni mic, which is very unusual. And I like putting it, so this might not have been the particular drums we were using, but
Right.
this is the setup. So you can't really see it, but under the snare there, yeah, you kind of can. It kind of hears in all directions equally. So I like to move that mic around to get some of the kick beater hitting the front of the head, because we had no hole or anything, and mostly the kick mics are getting just the like thumpy chest thing. So this under snare mic, hopefully when we listen to it, I'm not full of shit, you hear some of the kick attack as well, so it kind of like solves a few problems at once.
Tangibilizes it a little.
Yeah. Oh, and there's the SM7 on the right. That's cool. And then yeah, just some mics on toms. This Heil mic I really like on rack tom. A D112 on floor tom. I'm a huge fan of D112. It's like this like ubiquitous kick drum mic, and I never really have enjoyed it on kick drum, but it like the way it's voiced whenever I put it on a floor tom, I'm like, that sounds really cool.
Sweet.
So that, and then big tube mics is overheads. Trying to get Joe has some really nice cymbals, and we were using some really nice cymbals with a lot of like lush character.
Yeah.
So instead of doing like a vintagier
Right.
ribbon thing, we kind of wanted to hear like the air.
Yeah, the shimmer.
Yeah.
Do you remember what you were using?
Peisty Big Beats.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I don't have those anymore. But yeah, they really come through, especially on Waiting Around.
Yeah.
I remember.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. I really thought that was a smart move. And I think a lot of the stuff we had been referencing, that's another thing to talk about. You had sent me a really cool playlist of like, Spotify playlist of just like
Inspo stuff.
inspiration for sounds and stuff. And we had been listening to a good amount of like Tom Petty and stuff, where the drums kind of have this like brighter, less of the like fat, tubby, dark thing.
Yeah.
And I think it is a big part of the sound of the record, which is cool.
Definitely.
Yeah, so that's on there. I don't think I have a picture of the rooms, but they're just far away. Here's another picture. These are your drums. So these were the drums you used for the pre-pro setup. But this is not the mic setup from the pre-pro setup. So I'm not sure what we were doing.
That was definitely first day, I think. I remember
That
you
was
wearing
definitely
that
first day,
shirt.
because I remember for Waiting on Me, we used my toms and a different kick drum.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. But it's kind of a nice way to see the space and see the...
Yeah, so that's the ISO booth that when we were doing pre-pro, I was set up way the fuck over.
Then I was to the right of this frame.
Yeah.
in front
I
of
was
the
like right
drums.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, I love how, I think bass and drums always have a special...
We live
It's
together.
good to be as
Yeah.
close together as possible.
Sync.
Scooch in a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's the infamous sliding door from the trick on Waiting on Me.
Yeah.
Which was like the thing that sounds like a filter sweep into the last chorus. Was
So
it your idea?
It
You
was
were like,
my idea.
yo,
Yeah.
whenever I open this door, it makes this like kind of sound.
Yeah.
And I was like, no. And then I like went and listened. I was like, wow. So we're like, all right, we got to put a mic here.
Yeah.
And I think you replayed the fill.
Yeah,
We
because
did a few times,
Yeah.
originally you were playing it through a speaker.
Yeah.
And you're like,
Right,
just
right.
play the drums.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, just play it.
Yeah, I tried to do a trick of
Like a PA speaker
with a
thing?
PA speaker playing the drums back, so it'd be the exact same performance. I think it just never had the impact of like a real drum set.
Yeah, we said that.
Talking about the wrong song right now.
I know.
Sorry.
It was the coolest
But
thing we
that's
did.
the
though.
door right there. That's our secret.
That's
like,
the moment for Ben's
filter.
memoir right there.
Literally.
Plugging that part of the song
Yeah.
here.
I had
Yeah.
the sickest fucking idea.
Also, I have to bring up that having like a photographer, visual artist have photos of sessions is so much. You can like tell really easily like which ones are from like my phone, and then you see like Ben's like, or this is Kelsey actually. but like these beautiful like film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're like,
Super
wow,
8 footage and stuff.
here's my recall picture of an amp, and then like there's that.
Gotta make it look good.
This has been a much more enjoyable experience to sort through all the documentation of the session. But yeah, so with the drums, we can listen to them for a little bit. I'll like not go too wild, but we can like solo a few things. So and I love how much of a part of the groove that beat is. Like that's like the thing.
Yeah, I remember we changed up the kick pattern a bit from that demo. Just make it a little more straightforward, but works for the best.
Yeah, and you can hear the room a lot in there. I think I'm probably, I'm sending a few things to a in the box room, but let me remove that just to hear. This is like no plugins, nothing. This is just what went into Pro Tools.
Yeah, it's still really good. Like, the kick is more airy than I expected.
This isn't that little red club date, I don't think.
I don't think so.
This is probably
With your
some 22 or 24
22
drum.
Ludwig kit.
Yeah. So got that D12, really cool dynamic mic. They're older AKG. They're like the grandfather, I guess, of the D112. I don't really know, but they're cool. They have much more of like a knocky, woody mid-range, in my opinion. Yeah. None of that scooped like modern kick drum mic thing. So I like hearing that with something like an outside kick. Which is just
Some good sub on that.
Yeah. That's it, That's like the 47 FET kind of like hit you in the chest. I don't own at that point didn't own a real 47 FET, but it's just like a solid state big condenser.
Can I hear the difference between what we just heard plus that under snare mic that you were talking about?
Yes. So like solo the under snare mic?
Like what it adds to the kick sound.
Sure. Yeah, well let's check it out here by itself. So not a lot.
You hear it though. Just a little click on it.
Yeah, let's see. So it's adding
There's
a touch
something
to
there.
the transient of it. Maybe at this point, it did look like in the picture I had it much closer to the bottom snare for whatever reason, but we're probably moving around a lot because we switched drums out a lot. So I remember like kind of constantly micro adjusting everything to the new dimensions of the drums and the new placements of stuff. And then the top apparently is a 451, which is a condenser mic, which I don't do too much on snare.
Cool.
That's a nice
Just like
snare top
loses
sound.
everything after the hit.
Yeah, and you get a bit of the hi-hat in it, with the hotter mic. But I think because we had these really far overheads, similar to putting a mic on the ride, I didn't mind like hi-hat bleed in the snare. And from what I understand from Tim, the drums on the record you hear are not too different than this. There's no samples or anything. Cool. I think he said the whole drum bus through a pair of distressors, so you're hearing like more kind of like bus compression on them, but not too different. I mean, if we just quickly, so this is in our session.
Toast bread, avocado tape.
Yeah, that's from the master to this. They're louder.
Yeah.
And there's more like transient. That has more impact, but similar tone.
Yeah, sounds great.
Which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then so let's see what else we got. Not too much toms in this song. Here's my two tom mics I like. I guess you can kind of hear one. Yeah,
There it is.
that's it.
Me, man.
For me, I like to get a lot of the top end of toms from the overhead. So like the mics are really just there to be the part of it,
I also remember with the tom specifically, like I've done a few recordings before this. I've never like seen someone tune the toms to the song, which I thought was super
that took,
cool.
like,
So we
2
took
hours
a
of our
long
day,
time where
yeah.
pretty much we would sit there on the piano because the song was in G. So I think we did like G and B for the tones or whatever, and we're just sitting there. I was just kept hitting G, and you're like, keep tightening it. And I was just like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
But I remember that was very interesting because I've never seen anyone do that before.
Yeah, that's sorry.
No, it was good. It worked out. But it's just
I
like,
needed it.
the last 2 years have been the era of being way too obsessed with tuning toms. I think last week I was doing a session and I took like 2.5 hours to tune the toms.
I remember just sitting there, I'm like, does this guy have his mind?
Yeah.
But let's see what happens.
I think it really does pay off, especially on a record that's as exposed as this. You know, you really hear the instrument. Yeah. Like, I don't think you hear the notes specifically. You're not like, it's ding, 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 ding on the toms, but the fact that they're really consonant with whatever else is playing makes them just sit really nicely. And we had this whole thing where on this record, most of the songs are in G or B flat. Yeah. So we could kind of easily, like, you know, if we did G and B, change the B to a B flat and change the, you know, whatever, like something that's sort of happy in both keys. Yeah, I think it hit a point where it's like day one yet, and I don't think we hit, like, you know, it was like kind of new. Yeah. I was like, damn, these dudes think I am out of my mind.
I trusted you. I was just like, I got 3 days left.
Yeah, we gotta get these drums.
We gotta stop tuning the toms. But, yeah, I mean, in the overheads, I think you can hear, the overheads are not like cymbal mics. They're real, I want them to sound like what the drums sound like. So if we listen to them here. Yeah. Ton of tom in them, you know, and snare's really present. Like, it's also weird to solo channels. Like, to solo a snare mic, to me, doesn't sound like what a snare sounds like. It sounds like one part of sort of the sound we were going for. Because no one listened, you know, to a snare drum. Right. I mean, if you did, like,
sounds great.
God bless you, but you won't have hearing. But together, like, you know, even if you just kind of like took the snare mic and do this and then add the overheads. Gets so much more movement and air and like sounds like a drum set. And then the rooms are sick, you know. But when you like listen to all the drums and then put them in, real dark. You know, I think that using the really bright overheads, I was kind of like trying to fill a different space with that and hear more kick and snare in the room than just cymbal wash. Sometimes that can get overwhelming. This song, I don't think you ever go too hard, but some songs where you really hit cymbals in the room mics, for me, I always try and like put them on the floor and use dark mics because I just want to hear more of the kick and snare getting that sound. And it looks like we used a mono, which I don't, let's see what, one other mic, one for fun, for funsies. Oh, this is cool. This is this old Russian ribbon mic that I have that's unidirectional, which is unusual. Most ribbon mics are like figure 8. It just like looks one direction and that's it. And it looks like this old, it's in like DCCP on it and stuff. It looks cool. And let's see what that was doing. But I'm thinking it probably just like beefed everything out a little bit. Pretty roomy. Adding some like mid gnarliness. I don't know how present that was on the final mix, but
it sounds really cool.
Yeah. all sounded cool, and they're all relatively in phase with each other. Let's go. And then for what we're listening to in here, like I said, at this point there's no plugins. I might have had a few on at times when we were tracking. They're just running through a subgroup, which all I'm doing to that, which I had on the whole time we were tracking. This is how we always heard the drums, is like a mild cut at 400 and then some parallel compression, and that's about it. Just like a little bit, like if I take it off, it's just going to seem quieter. Yeah, just a little bit more filled out. Cool. And I think, is there any moments in here I should go to specifically while we're kind of on drums? I'm trying to think of
the outro.
See. Oh yeah, so we got the fade out.
We did like the over the downbeat fills and stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. Okay. So let's see. Yeah,
that was sick.
great drumming.
Thank you.
And I'm a big fan of building the fade out.
If we know we're gonna fade out, so
Yes.
like I think we listened in the control room. Like the headphones were being sent not through this, but like in the control room as you were playing, like I would listen to it fade out because I love like the thing you hear that last second before it fades out, and we're like, that's where that like cool fill should be.
I think there is a moment of that.
Let's listen to the master maybe.
Can't remember exactly.
Yeah, so here's like where it starts to fade out.
Right at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so sick.
And really, the guitar going off there is cool. I always loved that. You know, I feel like I listened to a lot of like the Beatles and like my mom's records growing up, and I would always think like it makes you feel like the song's going forever or gonna go longer, and you're just like, I want to know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know, like
There's something to be desired.
dot.
Picture like Rick Rubin standing in the control room, just going like the whole band. You know.
You know, there's a lot of opinions on fade outs. Fade outs are a hot take amongst
It is.
people. You know, some people are vehemently against fade outs.
Mm-hmm.
We did a few on
The
this
fade
record.
out means the song doesn't have an ending.
Yeah, I think if you want, I'm not going to derail this
Spill
too
the
much.
tea.
I have my spiel on fade
Let's
outs.
hear it.
I think that it's a celebration of the medium. And that's what I'll say, because I think that like recorded music is one medium to experience like the art of multiple people playing music with each other. Another would be like at a show.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like a live performance is a whole different medium. It's immediate. It's not something you can go back and re-examine. So you could, in the middle of this show in the fade out, like start addressing someone in the audience.
Yeah.
You could do something
True.
that never,
Yeah.
and that's a celebration of that medium. So why is there this idea in recording that it has to be like somehow like one for one with a live performance? And to me, like, I love all the things that you couldn't do live that you can do recorded, and leaning them into them in a creative way is like embracing recording, in my opinion.
And I think also for this, like we've played a few live shows since recording this, and like there's a few songs on the album where there's a fade out, but we've have sort of scripted jam sessions that we do, and it's just like this one specifically is just like we went very in depth with the big jam session, but the fade out gave us that room to do it, and I hope that like when we play these shows, played with how many people we played for, and then they hear the record, be like, oh, like what they're playing live is not what's on the record, so like maybe this is what they wanted to happen next, but for the sake of the record, it didn't happen.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be cool to have that.
It's such a
thing
fun
eventually
thing
happen, you know?
as a listener for me. Like that's so exciting.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know.
You want nothing more like you hear a song on a record that's intended one way and it has this fade out, and then like you see it live and they just start shredding. It's like, this is awesome. Like I've never heard this song this way. That is so cool.
And there seems like there's this, not from everyone, I'm not making this like this big issue, but I just feel like I've sensed this idea, especially with people becoming more common playing to tracks or to a click, or to, having things like a digital amp that like auto switches, these sort of technological advancements that I don't think there's anything wrong with them, but they seem to me like it's this energy trying to push live performances to be as much like the recording as possible. Where for me, I'm like, it's just a subjective opinion, but I love the things that make each one different. And I think that like doing something like that, like have a jam and it has a thing that never happened in the recorded version, like that makes me want to go to the show more instead of been like, some of the bands that take that in a really extreme way, I do find myself being like, this isn't too different than listening to your album. Like I'm not, there's nothing sort of like as more compelling.
Yeah, I agree.
Whereas if I come see y'all play a show and I'm like, oh, this is cool. Like this is different.
Yeah.
Whatever. That's my diatribe.
All in agreement.
It's all just,
it's rule.
It's just my opinion. There's no right or wrong. Art is
Yeah, you
whatever.
two did it on With or Without You. We should be able to do that,
If they could do it, we could do it.
Yes.
Well,
No, the new thing is fade ins.
Fade in.
That's what I'm going deep into this year. I'll be prepared to hear some fade ins coming in.
2020 was the year's phaser flanger.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fade-ins, yeah.
I'm done with phaser now. Well, I'm not done with it, but I'm not making it a point to put it on every single thing.
Yeah.
So now fade ins are big. There's a couple new ones. We'll talk about
get there. We'll get there.
I can't reveal too much.
Yeah.
Cool. So I guess continuing down the board here, we did.
I think I had a great time, more so than usual, doing percussion on this record than I think on some things where it felt like more of an afterthought on a lot of records I work on. This, I think we did them pretty early in the game.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because you weren't there the whole time, so it was like, oh, while Joe's here, let's get all these, like, build out the percussion arrangement.
Yeah. And I think going into doing this song, we were like, definitely hear a lot of percussion happening.
Yeah. And I mean, and then like Alpenglow is like a percussion master, you know. But you know, I think it appears as though this I didn't have notes on, but I think I just used the overheads, you know, for this shaker at the very least.
I do have a video
of some shaker.
iPhone video of just percussion in general. Of
really?
The setup. I think it's in that folder.
In a folder?
I think I did most of it in that one day that I came back.
Right there.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So we did change the setup a little bit. That's cool. Let's check this out.
There was a day later on in the 2 weeks where you came back.
Yeah.
And did other stuff. We were done with drums. We had put the drums away past this
I don't know what song this is.
This is content. Probably better place. No? No, it's not bad.
I have no idea what song this could be.
It might just be like testing the mic.
So, what's going on here? I think these were the two 47s we used as overheads, but I put them in Bloom line, which is where you switch the pattern on both of them to being figure 8 like ribbons, and then kind of put them 90 degrees off axis of each other, and it creates a really, it's one of the, there's a couple like coincident pair stereo techniques that are supposed to be like really in phase, nice natural stereo image using two mics. And this one's one of my favorites because it hears behind it just as much as it hears in front of it, so it's a really natural, like, you hear a lot of the room, but you also
bouncing off the wall.
Yeah, and it's like I really like, I think we did the tambourine in mono, but the shaker, I like percussion on like records to be stereo.
Yeah.
Just there's something about placing a mono shaker somewhere that feels very like laser beam.
Yeah.
And then there's kind of it coming from everywhere.
Right.
I feel like feels like for a roomy, more natural thing.
Well, I mean, I remember we took that totally to heart. We keep going on tangents with other songs, but for Alpenglow, we had an idea to have the tambourine play a rhythm with the panning.
Yes.
Which was like, we just fully nerded out at that point.
Well, I think at that point we had to place things so specifically because there was so much going on.
Yeah.
But here's the shaker, which is kind of part of, I mean, I think it's kind of misleading to even not listen to the drums without it, you know, because the groove you hear initially. But yeah.
We tried every shaker in the building.
Oh, true.
I remember.
I'm really big into it. I even have some back there.
Yeah. You have about 20 ready to go.
I think there's a good picture. I definitely have spent way too much time collecting, like, random percussion.
Or you had like a children's like maraca with like one beat in it, and you were like, "This is the one." I'm telling you.
Yeah, you can kind of see it
like,
behind Joe there. The one with the one beat is magic. I love that.
No, you were very excited about it. I remember.
Yeah, kind of see it. Whatever. There's like 10 to 20 different shakers, all the way from like rice in them to like large rocks to. I generally am not as into like the just the egg thing, just because it feels so like small.
Yeah.
And I think that like bigger, darker textures kind of sit with the drums nice. But I don't know which one this is. Let's see if I. That's probably 2 or 3 shakers.
It might be. Yeah. It does sound like 2.
Yeah, I think it might be the rice one, and then one of the maracas or something with a chunkier thing. That's great.
Great sound.
And then the way it grooves with the drums.
There's like tiny inconsistencies.
Such a big part of the vibe of the song. And then we'll get to my favorite percussion overdub last. But then it looks like a tambourine, which appeared to be one of the room mics based on the input that's in here. So this is a mono, and it's panned right up the middle, and I think that's one of the few times I like mono percussion. I wanted it to sound like part of the snare, like a doom, with it.
Was that the second pre-chorus? I didn't even know that was in there.
Yeah, no, let's see. So it comes in right here. Like an augmentation of the snare drum.
Yeah.
I think of that less as like one of these.
Right.
And more of like the snare drum now has a new thing to it for this part. Great. It looks like there's a little spicy bit here. Let's see. No.
Because we do that break.
Ah. Okay. And then this is my favorite one, is this thing, which I think I was pushing for, this tom.
Oh yeah,
You were talking
I was asking.
Totally
I wasn't
right.
there for this day, and I remember hearing like the first mix. I was like, "That wasn't me," but this is really cool.
Did
Like,
I
that
play
pulse.
it?
You must have, yeah.
I think
Oh,
so.
that
Is
I
there a
didn't
delay on
remember.
that too?
Yeah. So that I
Okay.
had written down. It's so I'll play it in context in a second, but I just love it. Kind of creates this. It almost is like what
Like
you would do
gallows.
with like a drum machine and filtering it, or
Right.
like a part where there's no drums. It kind of creates movement, but you're not sure what it is, like a heartbeat kind of thing. And then I love we used a real, it was an echoplex, so like a tape delay. So I think it took a minute to get it to be the right
Yeah.
time, but it's only on the close mic.
That's cool.
And then
I
there's-
pictured you guys like with a gong drum, like in the room, just.
I think it was just like a tom with
Yeah.
a towel on it, and then rooms, no delay. But it functions pretty cool in the song.
Sounds so cool.
I'm gonna listen to the master actually real quick because you can hear it right in this
It's
chorus.
definitely in there.
Yeah.
Orange blue sunset view. There's no
Just,
Cool.
just a
Fucking
fun
awesome.
ear
It's cool,
candy.
Like, because like there's still like a little bit of a kick pattern that happens. Like
Yeah.
when him sync up, it's cool. Like that's
cool.
going in the background, but there's still like that occasion, just like boom.
Yeah, it
Right.
flams
It's-
with the kick too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it gives you like something to follow, but then when you guys
And there's a
line up,
separate
it's-
pattern with
yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Really
that-
cool.
neat, and it looks like it just kind of rolls the whole ending as we're
Okay.
getting bigger. But yeah, pretty cool. Not a hugely extravagant percussion arrangement on this one, but I think all of it is like very functional.
Yeah.
That's another thing that I personally felt like years ago I would just like put percussion on because you're supposed to. It's like put the tambourine in the chorus, put the whatever.
Right.
And then so many records that I had like fallen in love with when I listened closely, you're like, no, it's like serving a
Intentional.
very specific purpose, and kind of having it all the time loses like its effectiveness.
Right.
It can be like a great dynamic tool. Okay, so now let's get into bass, the
Yes.
greatest instrument ever made.
Facts.
Big guitar. So yeah, I'm not sure how much in the bass part adjusted. I know that we had some songs where we kind of went
it was
down.
pretty. I mean, there was like that one part on the bridge we switched up the timing, but this I think the bass part pretty much stayed the same.
Yeah.
But I know like when writing the bass part, because like Ben sent the demo over, and I think for this song it just goes from G to C like down the scale pretty much. I think it's easy just to kind of just do whole notes down the scale, but like I remember when I was doing the demo for it, I originally had that, and at the end for the outro I had like the little bass lick, which became like the main bass line of the song. And then after like recording, I remember I sent it to Ben. I was like, I had this weird bass part. What do you think of this? And Ben was like, it's fucking sick. So then I moved it back up, and then when we started jamming beforehand, I realized I was like, that should just be the bass part for the whole song. Yeah, da do 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 do, like following the guitar lead with it. So that's where that pretty much came from. But I think it pretty much stayed the same.
Yeah.
From the demo to like actually recording.
I know. I forget whatever we did first. It might have been Waiting on Me. That one we wrote some stuff together.
Yeah, we worked on. There's a
still
lot
to
of
this day like my favorite outro.
the bass fill.
Just
Yeah.
go off on the bass.
Well, I remember it was
Yeah.
funny because I remember your wife was there. I think Mateo was also there, and we're all just like grooving up. And I hit the bass fill, and everyone was like, "Whoa!" Like, but then I remember the day after was I think we did like a full, pretty much 8 to 10 hours of just bass, which was a great day for me. But,
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the instruments that I feel like you can, like the singing and drums. Sometimes those are fatiguing, and I think you definitely did some very long days on drums. But bass and guitar are and keys are some of the nice ones where you can we can kind of punish ourselves.
We also had
a
the
little bit.
preparation, so I was like, I knew exactly what we were
Yeah.
doing. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're a very experienced bass player, so I think part of that helps a lot too.
Yeah.
But we ended up using this guy. You can grab it.
Grab it.
This is
Old Faithful.
the old P bass. I think we probably used this and then the Hofner on a couple.
I think it was all this. I think
I
on
feel like
one
there was
song
one with the Hofner.
we tried the Hofner, but I think
Maybe.
we went back to this.
Maybe
but
that's right.
I'm pretty sure it was all this.
I don't remember.
I remember playing it at one point, but then I think we agreed that it was
Yeah.
this. I could be wrong though.
The big difference, they both have flat wound strings, which are they have not a lot of top end. You hear more just like thumpy. And the Hofner just has like a much weirder sustain. It's more like that Beatlesy thing. And then this is just kind of like beautiful, great old bass.
Yeah.
But yeah, and we didn't use DI, which is so cool.
Dude, what was the amp that we were using? It was like an old school
It's a B15.
thing.
So it's like an Ampeg Portaflex. This is a picture of the setup. basically it's this old Ampeg amp that's sort of like a studio standard. I think we were talking about Tom Petty and stuff, and I was like, this is, I don't know if this is exactly what was used on all these records, but this is in the world for sure. This and an SVT are kind of the two you see a lot in historic recording of bass. It's great. It's not quite loud enough to play live, so it's like you usually see them in studios, and they're, you know, rare and sort of like tubes, and the tubes are all exposed on the top. You can see in that.
So cool.
It's a cool looking amp, and the top does flip back over to roll it around for like safety, I guess. All I know is this one that I've owned, I had to like really work with my tech to like find out how to keep all the components from rattling the latches you use, so we had to like tighten everything down, but it just sounds great. It's a 1x15 like combo, classic P bass through Portaflex is like the sound. And then 2 mics on it. One is that same like solid state big condenser like FET 47-esque mic, and then the other is this small EV. I think it's an ND408. I think I have them up there, but really cool mic that I think is super under the radar. We'll listen to it, but it just has incredible like upper mid range, and especially when you're having someone play with their fingers and flats, being able to have some like
the twang,
percussiveness, something
that allows you to hear more than just the subby like fundamental, like hearing some tone to it. I love the ability to blend in this like kind of like on its own might sound almost lo-fi mic, but with something that's more scooped and beautiful, like really fills in that important part of the bass that I think is what on a lot of old records stands out to me. You know, like a lot of things like the Sanzant pedal that are really like common right now, they scoop out a lot of those mids, and I think that when you have the space for it, having the bass sound like how a bass sounds.
You hear the strings and the hands on it. You know, it feels real.
Yeah, it feels real, and it feels sometimes a little less perfect in a really cool way.
Yeah.
So let's listen to the bass instead of just talking about it. But so here's where it come in with that riff. Ooh.
Fuzz on it than I remember.
That's the amp. Yeah, I think it was probably pushed, you know, once you get the volume past noon. And I am doing a bit of not much. So it looks like all that's happening plug-in wise is like a little more compression. And the mics are being compressed either way. Let's see. Nope. Bass. What the heck? Did I not write bass down? Man, you got ice, Matt.
Damn.
Oh, bass amp. There we go.
There it is.
Yeah. No, I guess they didn't go through compressors. I think the amp was doing kind of enough natural, compression, getting pushed that hard. Cool. Both through, like, Neve 1073-esque preamps. But yeah, and then I'm adding a little more, like, tube saturation to it, but it's not really too drastic. So here's that 47. And then here's that EV mic.
A little higher,
It just gets that kind of like gnarly, annoying mid-range, but like when you take it out,
it feels empty.
Really defines like the sound of the instrument. And then we got to listen to it with the drums, obviously, because that's groove. Chord thing.
That's a wrap for us.
Great. Bass chords are hard to pull off. I think that was
I remember this song too at the end. We'll get there, but I remember I was trying some harmonic stuff that you didn't know about, Eric.
Oh, let's check that out.
Like in the outro? Yeah, we didn't end up doing it, but I remember I was trying stuff with like the fourth fret and stuff, and you were like, that's a harmonic, I remember? I was like, we had this weird thing where you were like, I don't know you could, because I was like doing like this. Then like trying with like this finger to like hit this harmonic.
Like blew my mind.
And you were like, wait, you could do that? I was like,
I've been a bass player my entire life.
That's cool. I don't
think it made it onto the record,
but yeah, that's.
I remember we just had a funny moment that day. Where we were like,
I remember being like, wait, hold on, do that again. Yeah, this is pretty cool. always would love if like every record just released a bass and drums version of the record to hear stuff like that, because there's so many little nuances you kind of can't get as much, but that's awesome.
Our deluxe edition.
That was interesting to hear that, because I could have sworn you went up to the octave on.
Well, that's when we play live. That's what I've been doing. I just assumed that's what I did, but I guess that isn't. I gotta re-listen to the stems and learn the fill.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not. Where is this in G?
Yeah,
it sounds like C B. You know, like
The tones.
Yeah, probably did.
I think. I don't know. Listen. Yeah. Nice. All right.
That's cool.
Great. Yeah. I mean, the bass was pretty fun and pain-free process. I had a lot of fun doing that.
I think
Do you riff around at the end at all, or did you try?
I stuck with it.
It looks like he's the one of the few people holding it down. I think everyone's going off, and I think we may have made the decision someone's gotta
I think there's might be little things, but there was one moment. I guess it's like before the second bridge or whatever it is, but there's a part where where there's that gallop thing with the kick drum, doom doom cha doom ba doom doom, and me and him he does a drum fill, and I completely sync up with it, and I thought that was a cool thing we worked on.
Yeah, where
it should be that second chorus before it gets big. You're right here.
The way you just drop out on the last one is so sick.
And it drops out just in time for the snare, which is really satisfying. Kind of highlights. Let's hear that functionally. That's a cool moment. Nice transition, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was a big thing we put a lot of work into, is should transitions in certain parts feel stark? Should they be bled into using keys or vocals? I think that was a fun journey too, to massage all of those kind of moments. Cool. So I'm going to keep rolling along. The acoustic recording was a really big part of this album. I think that we spent a long time finding ways to. We mostly used your acoustic, which was what?
It's an Alvarez.
Yeah.
I don't know the model number, but it was $400.
Yeah, but it sounds really cool, and it really had a lot to do, I think, with the identity of the song. So I don't know if we tried other ones, but I think it was a pretty.
We used a couple of your acoustics when making a wall of acoustic sounds.
Yeah.
We used your dobro a little bit, but for the most part, the main acoustic sound was this one, and I think that was really intentional, because it has a very specific sound, and we wanted that to be familiar on all the songs. I think.
And I think you were very comfortable playing it.
Yeah, I love that.
And there's a lot of finger picking and sort of high dexterity moves going on.
Yeah.
And for me, another this is just me, I don't know if this is the right or wrong way to do it, is I think I always kind of hold performance as the ultimate, you know, and then after that, even fidelity or quality. So, if you're going to perform better on this instrument, that even if, and I didn't feel this way, even if it felt like we had something that sounded better, that doesn't even mean anything, because the performance is what makes something sound good. Exactly. So I think it was just oh no, this is the move for this guitar. So we did, I think I have a few pictures of this. I think I sort of set up a bunch of options. It looks like, this is a really good picture of it. And we always had the SM7 there for you to sing in, because there are a few songs on the record that you performed.
Yeah, just did it straight.
Vocal and acoustic simultaneously. So I think we just kind of set it up for the week and a half to be whatever we need, you can go sit on this stool and we got it. So there's the ribbon mic, which is a AEA R84, basically a recreation of this old RCA mic called a 77DX. Really nice. I love them. I use them. I don't know if there's a session I do without using them for something, but really beautiful, great example of a ribbon mic. Super. I don't even like to say it has a lot of low end as much as it kind of just has a tamer top end. It's just really forgiving, beautiful kind of softness to it. And then we got this pair of small diaphragm condensers, probably Octava MCO12s, kind of in this bizarre, looks like a stereo pair, but I think it's still technically a spaced pair, because it's more than 6 inches apart. But what I love is when you use them this way and you strum a chord, imagine this inverted into speakers, you hear it like a piano. You hear the low strings on the guitar from the left all the way to the right. Yeah. It's a pretty cool sound. We used it judiciously. Yeah. I think that was not the meat of the acoustics. That was on overdubs or certain parts to add width.
Right.
But
there was definitely specific points where we were like, like doing big raking chords. Where we're like, this is what we're trying to do.
Yeah. And they're much brighter. Yeah. So it provided us, if we're going to like have a song that has multiple instances of your guitar, we can have ways to present it differently that feels like varied and dynamic. But let's check it out real quick. So we have the main acoustic. There's 2 acoustics in this. And I took the rooms. And these rooms were definitely those dragonflies. Mm-hmm. Just kind of far away from you. So we had, I think, a different setting for the finger-picked guitar. And then this is where it strums, where we switched to... It's just a copy of the tracks, but a different blend of the mics, kind of illustrating, what we were doing here. So the main finger-picked acoustic, we used those 2 small mics because the brightness of it was nice and you kind of hear a little more of the hands. So that would be this guy, right? Well, this is the whole sound of it. It has some rooms in, too. Might have to wear headphones. I'm kind of far away, but if whoever's consuming this is listening on headphones, I think in there you can hear a bit of like the like thummier low notes kind of coming more from the left. And same with the percussion. Like instead of it just being a mono thing, it kind of provides this smeared, more beautiful, space-consuming thing. The rooms are super cool with this.
I love the intro. Yeah. Here's
just the 2 condenser mics. Here's what the room does. Especially when you stop. Very cool. I love that the sound of that warehouse room is just like...
It's part of the album.
Yeah. Like it's just such an identity factor, It feels... Yeah, I love albums that feel like it could only have been made here and now, and that's it. And like, it'll never be the same again, like, because I have a different keyboard in the room, so the room sounds different. It's like, that was like how that space with us in it sounded.
I remember, it was funny too, because I think one of the room mics was right next to the door. Mm-hmm. So I remember, like, when we were doing acoustics, like, like, even if we were done, like, the mics were just, like, hot, and, like, someone, like, I'd be in the control room, and someone would walk out, you just hear, like, the door just slam, because it was so loud right next to the mic. I just thought it was just so funny. Or, like, keys jangling.
Yeah.
Like, you would hear someone coming from outside, like, oh, someone's coming in, like, you hear them coming through the door.
Yeah. Also, there was crickets outside.
And inside.
There's probably crickets everywhere.
Crickets are on the record.
This was early warehouse when I was still evicting the crickets.
Yeah.
We recorded them at the end. I remember the last day we were like, well, we have a little time. Let's just fuck around. And so we recorded a voice memo of the crickets and of the train going by.
Yes.
And put him on
the train has made some appearances since this record on a lot of records. The crickets have not. Yeah, I think this is one of the last ones where I sort of... But I remember moving in there being like, oh, it's just cool. It's a warehouse. I don't even care if there's bugs or mice or anything. Like, the only thing
crickets
would be allowed. And I'm like, of course there's crickets in here. My dog may have helped evict them.
Mm-hmm.
But... Yeah, if the room is like, if this was the live room and that's the corner with the door, it was sort of like Ben's acoustic setup was there, so the rooms were, one was by the entrance.
And one was by like the couch or whatever.
Yeah, so it kind of, you could spy on people while recording. And then here's the strummed guitar, which, I guess in... defiance of my thing saying the strummed parts we would use the small mics for. I think we wanted more of a beefy mono thing. You're using a pick. Mm-hmm. So we like the ribbon better. So it's just rooms and then the other mic, the ribbon mic here, which is also cool. And
what is that?
Something's happening. I don't know. Yeah, that's on there.
Is that the merch guy?
It was here. Maybe someone was like eating some Giannis or something.
It's probably me.
Chicken parm,
Eat some chicky palms.
But you can kind of hear the transition, you know. Cool. Sounds like the same guitar, just like a different flavor of it. And then what we ended up doing, I think the reason we kept the mono in here instead of using those stereo ones was because we did an overdub of a Nashville.
Right.
And that's very stereo. So I think
part.
having a more directional, strummed acoustic ended up being the move. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think, we can check out I have a few more pictures, I think, of like this. It's pretty much the same setup in here. Here's a nice bigger view of the room. There's our percussion zone. I'm not sure what this 47's doing, just hanging out.
We'll talk about vocals later, but we did a double vocal setup where...
Was it like a farther mic?
There was a farther mic that was like... Remember, it was like the Jason Isbell, Raylan Baxter thing.
Yeah, I remember our vocal setup, and I have notes on it, but what's the double mic thing?
We set up two mics, one that was closer to me and less hot, and another that was farther and hotter, and depending on, because we were talking about like my ranges...
Yes.
When I would go higher, the farther one would be like...
Have some natural room compression, more room sound. That's cool. We'll listen to that for sure. I mean, I'm not sure here. I think I had some kind of notes on it, but yeah. Okay. We'll check that out. I know I was doing my like weird serial compression thing, so like with the distance. So we will check that out. But the acoustic setup was great, and we probably spent more time, I think, in this form than any other thing on the record. I think we spent a lot of hours together of just kind of... There was the two songs that you did singing and
Mountainside
and Apple Cheeks. And those two we did a lot of takes of, because they're both like longer songs.
Yeah, I mean, but remember basically every night,
yeah,
at the end of every day, we were like, we're just going to do a couple takes of both of these songs once we're exhausted and like, in that headspace. And it was arduous. I remember there was a couple points where I was like, I just can't do it. I'm like not hitting what I wanted to hit, but then obviously you get there.
It takes time. I mean, doing something like that, especially being conditioned to hear things so perfect, for the last 20 years, like hearing something that's like, that sounds like me playing the song on acoustic and vocal. I'm not saying for anyone. That's a journey, and I think that it's only the performance. The only thing that matters is the performance. So we did a lot of takes. So I have a lot of memories of that, of like, you're like, all right, I'm going to go in, and you go in.
Give you props, man.
Sitting there just listening. And you have to listen. It also puts an interesting pressure on me, too, especially with just the two of us, because you have to
just check out,
I could, be going on my phone, and it's like, well, I am the only person with any ability to have objectivity, and Ben's trusting me for that. Right. So, like, I remember there were times, it was like 2 a.m, and I'm like, I need to focus on this, because if I hear like a magic moment, I'd be like, we should check this take out, and you have to concentrate on performing.
Right.
So it's very hard to be self-aware when doing that. Yeah. So that was cool. And I think that was like, even if those songs weren't the point, like just that energy of doing that a lot is like a cool exercise.
Absolutely.
But yeah, the acoustic setup in this song, pretty straightforward, and they sound great, and the way you play it has everything to do with it. I want to show this Nashville thing. This is exciting. Yeah. This is a classic trick that I love. So for anyone who doesn't know, Nashville tuning is if you took a set for a 12-string guitar, you know how you have like the normal E, A, D, G, B, E, and then the E, A, D, G have a octave higher string, and then B and E just have a doubled string. So if you removed all the normal guitar strings, it would be octave up, octave up, octave up, octave up, normal, normal. Mm-hmm. And it's just a 6-string guitar tuned to that, and it's kind of like bizarre to play, especially when you get to things between the G and the B string, because it's lower and it's confusing. But there's this, kind of production trick where if you play a Nashville guitar with a regular acoustic, it kind of sounds like a 12-string, except you can place it and adjust the balance. When we were going referencing a lot of Tom Petty stuff, one of these things is sort of this wide, chorusy, even tidy, early 80s, late 70s kind of sounds. So this thing, just live, ran it through what appears to be like an Eventide unit, and then this one also we ran through reamping a delay. So it has delay on it as well, giving a little more spaciness. But what the Eventide's doing is it's sort of doing this like Haas effect thing where it delays one side like a few milliseconds more than the other side, which creates this width. And then also does a static detune, meaning like it's not like a chorus where it's going detuning in a modulation. It's just like the right side is 3 cents lower permanently. And it creates this really pretty width to it. So right here, you kind of hear and when you hear it enter, it's just does a lot.
That's aggressively petty right there.
Yeah, aggressively petty. Very much. It was like as soon as you heard that, we were like, oh. I think we didn't abuse it, but we definitely used it a few times.
We know what we're doing.
We know we can only take this so far, but it's a good thing to take. And that's just a like super fun production trick for this big part in the middle. That's one of the big differences from the demo. Cool, pretty simple. Probably did it through those two mics as well. Probably just sat down and played it.
That was the nice part of having this setup, was we could just like pop things in whenever and not have to like, okay, we're doing all the acoustics now. It's like,
That's one of the things that when I'm lucky enough to be able to do records like truly consecutive days, like more traditional style, it's just like you kind of leave everything up. It just feels great to be like, that's a great thing. I think being able to have things stay and be lucky enough to have a space big enough to leave them set up, because there's been times I've done records that I had the time, but it was just like, this room is too small, I can't leave everything set up. It was great. We had the organ mic'd up for like 8 days straight. We had all these, you had 2 mics for guitars, which we'll get into, that were just out, and a bunch of amps, and I'd be like, let's try this amp, just move the mic onto that, had the acoustic set up, had the percussion set up. It was nice, especially when we're developing. It's not like just recreating the demos. We're trying big.
For sure.
So I discovered this whirly part, which I had forgotten. We put the orange glue melody in.
Right.
Did we?
Yeah. It was, I want to almost say I asked you to do it after we were done recording.
I feel like
that
I remember
could be
text message
true
about this.
This track, this stereo track, definitely I remember doing with you there. This one might have been after the mono.
I texted you after and I was like, dude, we have to put that on this. Can you please just like play it?
That's because I wonder, because this is a very important part of this middle section in terms of even the way it's panned against the big electric guitars. I feel weird that it had not been there from earlier. I don't know.
It was either this one. That happened on a song.
I think it was Mountainside.
Mountainside?
Yes.
So I remember we got the original demo back, and I was like, "Where's that part?"
Yeah.
And you're like, "Oh no."
But that melody, kind of like a cool like motif, concept-y, like returns a lot. So the whirly, I think, is super super neat. This first one, another thing, this is definitely through one of the guitar amps and one of the mics. I don't know which, but probably like Princeton or Supra or something. I don't really like the sound of whirly DI. I love whirlies, but just DI, it kind of has this like pokiness that just putting it through an amp just mellows that out.
Beatles it.
Yeah, it's so much more satisfying for me. A lot of people like to mic the speaker on a whirly, so that's a cool trick. That's kind of thinner, but really cool sounding because the speaker inside it like drives. But here, let's see what we got. Phaser, let's go.
This is in the bridge?
This is in the pre-chorus.
teeth.
And it's got the trem on it that's built into the whirler.
Right.
So it's like tremming and phasering and
I
amping.
had no idea that was in the track.
Oh, shit.
I love that in there. When that comes in that second pre-chorus, it is like you've been waiting a minute into this song to hear like, okay, we're a band now. You know what I mean? Like, God, come on.
Yeah, it's
That's
great.
crazy.
It functions a lot like a guitar.
Yeah.
You know, like it kind of occupies the same space as a guitar. And then we went to Freaky Town with this one, which I called Vibey Boy. Yeah, I think it was just running it through a memory man, kind of doing like waterfall-y stuff. This is cool to hear on its own.
That's right.
And then-
Damn.
I remember you were like, what if I just like hit some random keys?
Yeah.
I was like, what?
I was like, I know. I think
I
this
hear it.
will make sense. But yeah, it functions really cool right when we get to this chorus.
It's funny because I know that's in the recording. I just assumed there was like some weird guitar delay that was just like, oh, let's just paste this here. I didn't realize that this was like thought out. That's insane.
Little ear candy. Nothing, not playing a huge part, but it was cool for that moment.
Yeah.
And I think that those chorus, I'm calling that the chorus. Is that cool?
I don't know
The
what
part
they
you
are.
say.
I think it is.
Orange blue.
I'd say it is.
Sure,
Yeah.
that's the cool.
It happens
That
twice.
part, really opens up, and we switch to that tom thing, and the drums are kind of chiller. So it's like, how do we, with a vocabulary that's not like busting out synths or crazy, like how do we do something that's in this world that still feels like dreamy and beautiful? That was fun. I thought that was really cool.
So awesome.
Kind of blasting through these keyboards because it's less interesting because the kid was playing them. So here's the B3, which is big on this record. It happens a lot, and I think one of the best moments of B3 is that transition into orange blue.
Yeah.
Like that's really neat
Incredible, yeah.
because it's changing keys from G to B flat, which is kind of like a heavy key change. Like the minor third up.
Yeah.
And I think we were just screwing around with the drawbars, and it created this really nice, atmospheric transition. And the RB3 has a here's the thing itself, but there's the B3 itself. But I have a picture of the Leslie, the way it was mic'd, which is for those who may not know, that's sort of the dedicated speaker cabinet for the B3. I was saying ours has reverb in it, which we used a lot. It's like a spring reverb tank. But it's this spinning speaker that you can basically control slow or fast. And when you hear it, the sound.
Yeah.
But this is, I think, I was just walking around and I found this phone video. But you can see right here, there's these two gobos next to the organ. And then, I meant to pause it. I don't know how to do this thing. How did computers work? Yeah, there's just like a pair of mics sort of like on the speaker. So they're spaced out, so as it spins, you hear like this kind of back and forth between the left and right. And it's, doesn't need much more explaining beyond that. It's a very classic and familiar sound, but so it's going slow, fast. It probably goes off a little more.
I love that you can hear the changing.
That's like in the video too, right? Like that specific part, like during like the intro sequence for the video we made for this song. Isn't that like the sample you used?
Yeah.
That's like from that track,
I don't know
right?
if I told you that.
No.
I
You'll
don't
see
think
it.
I've even showed you the music video, but there's like a little intro that's like supposed to be like the start, like
talk show, whatever.
intro of a TV show kind of thing, and
It's like
took
that exact part you just
the
played.
organ and I like made it the sound of the intro.
Oh yeah, when you hear it alone, it totally like evokes
Yeah.
that
Yes.
thing. That's
I also
cool.
remember because like for the sake of recording, things are like done really loud, and you're just like in the control room listening. But I remember this specifically was really loud.
Yeah.
I remember
So
during Waiting
loud.
on Me, you were doing some of the stuff. I walked out and it was just like it was the loudest
Oh,
thing I've
in
ever.
the
It
room.
was so
Yeah.
loud.
Yeah.
The thing with that is I used a lot of. It has a tube amp built into that spinning speaker, and you can kind of choke it at different levels to make it overdrive more. And like when you fully open it to overdrive, which was an important part of like Better Place and stuff, like it's freaking
It's
loud.
loud.
It is like a huge, loud instrument. But it's great as a production tool and has been used on infinite records from all time, just because it can sound really wide and lush and kind of like doesn't get in the way of anything. So like, even just in this bridge, if I just mute it and unmute it, you'll kind of like...
I love how you stayed, like, the rhythm that you found at that outro is totally different from any other rhythm, and it's almost like a non-rhythm. Like, you're just kind of holding these notes in a random fashion that just, like, gave a platform to the rest of the band.
Drony kind of thing. Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah, it's neat. I don't want to spend too much time talking about B3, but I also found another cool video that kind of... I just think this might be a little interesting for people that if they've never used one or seen one, and you only use like the Nord thing. But it's not from this song, but I have a bit of. You can hear it. Switch the thing. But you hear all the reverb is built in, and that thing I was moving is just like a switch that makes it so. Playing it, and I'm by no means like an expert at it, and there are plenty of people we all know that are experts at playing this. Like, you really fall into this weird thing of you're using your right hand to play a lot, and your left hand is adjusting these drawbars and switches and knobs and reverb knob and all that. It becomes like very different than what you think of piano, you know? And because of that too, there's no sustain pedal or anything. It's kind of this technique of like learning how to, like, if you're holding two notes and you want to add one, you like move your other finger to it, you know?
I think that's part of the magic of the sound of it is that there's no sustain.
It's just
this like
is on or off.
Just holding it.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
And there's a volume pedal, and that's one thing that some of the people who are real experts at it, the way they manipulate the, if you go listen to like old Sly Stone records and stuff, like they're using the volume pedal as like a whole other dynamic element to it. It's just really exciting.
I'm also curious, like, for this part, because I wasn't there, like, when you guys did like the organ for this, like, because when you hear like that, I guess, chorus part of it, you're playing certain things, then we hit the bridge part, there's like a lot of like different inversions where like you'll do one thing, like it's just C, D, E over and over, but like sometimes you'll do like an inverted D, and then sometimes you go like down to a different D. Was there like a lot of thought behind that, or was that just kind of like the performance that you did?
I don't know if the way I think about it's the correct way, but I usually just think about it in terms of like how much it's
like how little you can move your hand or something.
Yeah,
like...
definitely. As many common tones as I can keep. So if we were in C and I'm playing, you know, C major, like and you have the E hanging out, which is the third, and we go to F, and I could just move my pinky from G to F. You can make it like a F major 7, and if that sounds cool, I'm only moving one note.
Right.
It just gives you that opportunity to keep it going. Like I said, I don't know if everyone thinks of it that way. So I think of maintaining common notes and then, you know, kind of dumb simple. Like, it should be higher or a brighter setting in parts where I want it to cut through more, and it can be lower and a darker drawbar setting in parts where I don't want to hear it as much.
Yeah, just to complement everything else.
Yeah. The Leslie is the real thing for me. Like, the fast thing is exciting, the slow thing is super chill, and like going back and forth between them creates this like movement that just feels very human, you know? So
I get a lot of, I wouldn't say I get a lot of compliments. You get a lot of compliments that you don't know about on the organ on this album.
Oh, that's cool.
And I love it. It's one of my favorite parts.
Hell yeah. I love playing organ. My mom was a church organist. I had one in my house growing up, so I'm like a high-level tinkerer, you know, is what I would say. You know, like I for production stuff, love doing it. And talking about Tom Petty, like Ben Montage is like it. You know, that was, Tom Petty was also, it was cool that you were referencing him and the Heartbreaker stuff so much, because that was like some of my mom's favorite stuff and what I first listened to, and Ben Montage was in my brain for like what organ's supposed to sound like. If you wanted like neo soul or gospel, I have way less vocabulary in that, but if you're like Tom Petty style, I'm like, all right. But that's enough of that. So let's get into some guitars. So the guitar narrative on this, we tried to keep it pretty simple, like effects. It wasn't like we had 30 pedals ever being, you know, sometimes one big ticket item like a delay or modulation, but like pretty like I don't know, like I don't want to use the word vintage, but just like it sounds like guitar.
Straight up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I was saying at the beginning was like we went into this just knowing how it needed to sound. It was just straight up, like shoot right down the middle, you know, classic American guitar rock sound.
Yeah.
You know, which the song called for it, and we just were serving it. You know,
We mostly used a Princeton.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I think a Supro like 110. You know, if we wanted a different contrasting sound, and then we used your infamous Strat for a lot for the record.
you used your tone.
Sometimes, well, I have that picture. This is my favorite picture.
He loves this picture.
Is Ben playing my telly, which a big joke of mine is always I like make fun of Strats and call them dad guitars, but
I got it from my dad.
But it sounded great.
Fitting.
And then every once in a while you play the telly and humor me, and I'd be like, "See how much better it sounded." Like just also
I
sounds.
actually
First
think-
behind the camera plays the telly. So.
I remember
You know.
Kelsey Ayers took these photos, and she was just there for the one day, but we were doing this song when she was there, and used that for a lot. I think it was at the very least.
I think this is the lead through the Supro. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and then the main guitar that's sort of similar to your acoustic, I think, is your Strat through a Princeton, which I had a little quick picture too of the amp setup here. This probably changed from time to time. We definitely had the Supro on top of that Twin, but like we just had a bunch of different things out, and like had these, not these two mics. Eventually, it was this 47 or the R84, that same one we used on your acoustic, the Ribbon. Which I think it says here. Yeah, all the guitars were one of those two mics or both. I'd kind of blend them or pick one or the other. But I like recording guitar with one mic. A lot of people do 2 or 3 or 4, and it's not wrong. I mean, I've heard some amazing recordings that are done like that. But I think with what we were going for and like the guitar to just have this classic feel, it was like, I don't, not even putting it right up against the speaker, like giving it a foot or two. That's how a lot of, older recordings were done. You just kind of hear the instrument more, and it's less of this larger than life, super hi-fi sound, but it evokes what we were going for. Same with bass. That's another big thing I wanted to say. Is I really am a huge fan of keeping the mic further than I think my perception of what is sort of normal. I don't know if that's true, but I feel like a lot of times I see pictures of things in studios, they're always really, really close.
It's like on the whatever the sheet, whatever the front of it.
And I don't think that's wrong. Like I said, I don't really believe in right or wrong, but just to my ears, like there's a lot of times where the more I've backed it away, it hits a point where it starts to sound thin, but like the couple feet really do a lot, to making it feel, I guess, how I want it to sound in my head, But so here's the Strat through the Princeton, I think. Definitely the Princeton.
Is there like tremolo on that?
Yep, and verb. So you're kind of doubling the acoustic.
Yeah.
Nah, not quite. There you switch to strums, but here. Which is a cool kind of 3D sound.
The blend of those is amazing.
When you went to record, like, did you want to do that, or was that like a thing Eric was like, you should like try doubling with the electric? Do you remember how like that
I
happened?
think you had done that on the demo.
Yeah, I think it was pretty intentional.
I think
having them kind of space out and the acoustic follow that thumbing pattern in the choruses is like so cool. It brings it like back. You feel the air, and then it like comes back and they tighten up together again. I love that sound so much.
It's great. I mean, that's like the sound. I know it's the Princeton because we were barely using pedals, and the Princeton has that's a Fender trem, the like really kind of square sounding opto trem, and then the spring reverb. Like so, that was probably just the guitar plugged into the amp. Super neat. And it deviates from the acoustic in small ways. Really cool. And then there's this lead guitar, which sort of plays with the other guitar for the back half of this song. More driven. So yeah, it looks like the first guitar we heard was with a ribbon mic, and definitely a lot fuller and darker. And then this one's just like gnarly, more top end. I think it sounds like the Telly through the Supro. But you do some tasty riffs. That just sounds like rock and roll. It's great.
I remember that part too, because we weren't there when you guys did the guitars, and then when we started, practicing with Kris, learning all the parts, singing, we could play stuff live, and then I didn't realize that electric guitar isn't just straight chords. Like there's a riff with like the index finger behind it, like jumping in between strings. And it's just super interesting. It just moves the whole part together. So it's just a super cool part.
I think that's a part of the 70s recordings we referenced too, where it was just like, they're mostly recorded live, so like maybe the guitarist would do something that wasn't as planned out, but it kind of fit and sat great. And like that energy, even though we did it more like this, came across from the way those parts were played. And I can't remember, but I think I was like, you had a lot of them, and I was like encouraging, like, those moments are great, even though they're not the same as the acoustic, you know.
Yeah.
But
definitely.
I mean, awesome, and they really complement each other. These two amp sounds. Together, they get real 3D. You got
sounds clean, but still back end. You know? Like it's really good.
And that's probably very similar to most of the guitars on the record are probably one of these two or pretty close. Then we got our fun production moment, which was on the demo. This blip guitar is what I called it. You hear it in the demo here. Oh yeah.
It's like a different kind of like pattern, or I guess like different timing. Yeah. Like it's like in 3 instead of 4 or something. I know it's like kind of weird. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not sure.
Whatever it is, it kind of just provides this like, like textural element that kind of is wide and feels like floaty, and most people probably won't notice it.
That, I think was the intent. Was like, it's the drums are coming in, the bass is coming in. We want it to feel like we're finally the car's moving here, but like. This is just gonna aid in that feeling and not be a part that is even like noticed. It's just a vessel.
Yeah. And it grooves great with the percussion and drums too. Like there's a rhythmic element to it that sits really nice. I mean, let's see what we got here. It said that it was through a delay, like that Strymon timeline, and then it also went through that Eventide thing I did to the Nashville to make it feel wider. You'll hear it sounds. I have the right channel panned up, so it kind of is coming more from the left, but I'll spread it out as we listen to it real quick just to hear it.
Is that like a tape delay?
Yeah. And then this chorusy wide sound. But like when you hear it with the rhythm section, it's super neat.
Like a theme.
Those like harmonics, or is it notes that you're just like
it's just notes? I think.
Wow.
I'm palm muting it.
It feels like at the end. I mean, it visually looks this way, but it looks like it was a little more soft and tight when it first reveals itself, and then it kind of opens up a little bit, which is great too. It doesn't feel flown. It doesn't feel like a loop. It feels like this other moving organic presence.
I mean, it was really interesting doing that outro of that song, because while we had planned for it to riff there, like we riffed on the demo, when we were recording it, we were basically like building this riffage from the ground up by instrument, and I had like, when we were doing pre-pro, like I had a certain thing that I was playing to allow Joe to riff, but then once he laid down his interpretation, we were like, framing our approach to the next thing in relation to what was already there.
Yeah.
And like I had planned, I'm sure on the demo, this little loopy guitar I played just straight through the same way the whole time, but as we like had compounded this outro, you know, we just naturally in the moment felt like, okay, it's going to change with everything. This is the way it's going, and we're all going to just kind of follow that lead.
Yeah.
Which is so cool.
I think that was an important energy too, because we recorded these. The majority of them, except for maybe some of the acoustic ones, are to a metronome. You know, so like if we had wanted to, flying things is an option.
Right.
And I think we really resisted that a lot, especially with vocals. I know, like on Alpenglow, I'm sure we like some of these percussion loops. We made loops out of them.
Definitely, yeah.
But like in general, I had you like play the tambourine. Like it was like play it and change it for the this part. You know, so it feels like what we're going for, where it's like like it's never quite perfect and never quite the same. And same with the vocals too, which I think is great. Some people nowadays, or some singers or artists, I think home recording is so affordable and available that get used to some of these, like, you know, and they're like, you know, kind of hit me with the like, cool, well, you can just fly that to the choruses, and I'm like, I can. It's going to sound exactly the same, you know, and then to me, it makes me start to wonder, like, well, why have multiple choruses? You know, like, can we develop something, even if you just say a word different, or even if it might make it more of a story. And it's not wrong, once again, not wrong to fly vocals, but I just thought it was a really nice energy for what we were going for. And I remember you were pretty like adamant about that. I thought it was great, especially with songs with lots of harmonies, where you kind of like could fudge it. Like it's like, no, like we're gonna do each one.
Yeah. It to feel real, you know.
I think it does. it's awesome. So good transition. Other than acoustic guitar, this is probably what we spent the most time working on. I think we talked a little bit about how, like, on the demos, there's a lot of this interplay between, like, kind of like dual lead vocal is what I would call it. You know, like different melodies happening at the same time. There's also a decent amount of harmonies. I'm pretty sure all the harmonies on this one were on the demo too. We definitely added and got real deep into some harmony arrangements on some songs. But I think the thing to talk about most with this would just be kind of like the interesting setup, and then like there is a moment of the dual lead vocal. So let's just like listen to it first. I'm gonna jump around to some parts where you sing low and high, and I'll do like drums and bass with it just to kind of give it some context. Okay, there's no drum or bass there, so sounds great.
Now we're stuck inside this cage with memories on replay of times when skies were not so gray, a mirror in a frame of orange blue sunset view.
So that's kind of the high voice, but you're singing real softly. And then I think over here we get more into like the high range.
Glimpse in your room, heard it in a lullaby tune.
Sorry if this is intense to listen to it. So
I was actually just thinking that sounds good.
We worked really hard.
Yes.
Yeah, we did a lot of takes. You were like beat up. Yeah. But we did a lot of takes. One of the few times I think I had someone equal to, and sometimes greater than, like as laser focused on getting the perfect performance. Usually I feel like I'm burdened with that a lot, and I feel like it was nice to be able to listen with you, because like I'd be like, this is great, this is weird, and you're like, also this thing and this, and and I'm like, oh, cool. Which was awesome. So it's a really unique vocal setup. I don't know if the resulting sounds extremely experimental or bizarre, but the setup is really unusual. I'm adding some in the session. We had been sending it to a little more room and a little more plate reverb, but like just to kind of hear it as like, you know, what was recorded. Like here might be a good spot to. Oh my gosh. Okay.
Toast bread, avocado tastes best waking up in your bed.
Let's go high.
At first glimpse in your room, heard it in a...
So you hear a lot of the room in the lead vocal with no, like I've cut these sends. And that has a lot to do with the distance that we were using. So I don't know if I have an exact picture of the setup. I think I looked for a while. Did you have any?
There might be some videos in that video folder.
Yes.
I know there's a clip of you singing "Waiting on Me" with
No,
the vocal setup.
I think you sent me a yes. Wait. There was this. Yeah, it's you singing Ginger Chew.
Yeah.
So this is as relevant as you can get. Kind of is the. So not too far.
But there's a second one.
Yes.
Sunset view.
Oh, this is orange.
No,
I'm an idiot.
This is orange blue.
I'm an idiot.
They all say the same words. Yeah, just kidding.
Well, so even on the camera audio, you can hear the room,
Yeah.
which is cool.
Nothing more than orange blue.
Which is nice. So I think didn't we have like a piece of tape on the floor?
Yeah.
And so
distances.
where you're standing right here, there would be times when you're singing high that you were up to like 2 or 3 feet further away from the mic.
Yeah. And you would slam it.
Yeah.
More.
Yes. And I think that the other like trick to sort of this setup was, I don't usually advocate for myself to like slam a vocal with compression when recording it, just because that's one of the hardest things to undo, almost impossible sometimes. So I usually take it easy. I do love compressing things to tape, and like there was all kinds of compressors on the drums and all that, but like with the vocal, I tend to not want to overdo it out of fear of ruining the vocal. But this trick is basically, we use the 47, and then I had it through 2 compressors, but both doing very little and both very different in character. It's first going through this TLA 100, I think Summit Audio makes it. It's like a tube opto, it's like an LA2A, very, like slow, gooey compressor. And it was probably, I think I had you like, when you sing your loudest, I wanted it doing 1 or 2 dB of reduction, like almost nothing. And then it went through an 1176, which is much faster FET compressor, which same thing. And that wouldn't meter until you sang your loudest, and then maybe 1 or 2. But with the combination of that, the natural kind of compression in a room, which I think is something that is worth mentioning too. Like, I think when people see on TV, like someone recording a vocal, it's always like in a very small, dead booth, and they're very close to the mic.
Right.
And that is a great way to, if you want the thing where the person's voice just sounds enormous and so close to you. Imagine, it's the same, the microphone's like your ear, so imagine someone singing 1 inch from your ear. It's like very intense, and you hear like the all that stuff.
Moist.
And then there's this dead room, so you're kind of killing everything. And I think that's the reason for a lot of vocals that sound a certain way. I think that a lot of talking about this, like older records, a lot of time, if the vocal wasn't tracked live, in which case you would have to be really close because you were playing guitar at the same time, there was some distance on it. And a nice sounding room, obviously if your room you don't like the way it sounds, deadening is a useful tool. A nice sounding room, if you get a little distance on it, to me, it sort of naturally evens out a lot of these like certain notes. Yeah. When you sing in the bathroom and one note rings really loud, like in the shower, like because of the room, something is resonant and kind of annoying. Just backing away and doing that sort of already starts to smooth those things out a lot. So I think the compounding of that and I think it took hours to find the sound. Like we tried a lot of different stuff.
Because I think it's good to bring up and mention the like references that we were trying to go for, the Raylan Baxter and Jason Isbell sound of like it feels like it's close to you when they are more intimate and quiet, but when they get up to that higher register, it like it's almost like mic breakup sound, but not really. And it's just this like it doesn't feel harsh to like go to sing slightly harshly because of how you're picking it up. And that was like just personally has been a hurdle for me as a vocalist my whole life, and I hadn't found a solution to it until working with you on this and doing that way. I was like, finally it felt like I could sing. I found the way for like to record my voice,
and feel satisfying. Yeah. I think that and I definitely don't feel like I had like I know the solution. I think I was like, all right, I'm down to figure it out with you. the kind of net result from this like room compression and this all these compressors and this distance is what you were talking about too, which is great that you said that, where when you sing quietly, there's obviously less sound going into the room, so it sounds drier.
Yeah.
And all these things are making it so it's not too much quieter in reality, it just sounds drier. Yeah. And when you sing loud, it sounds roomy. Yeah. Which is a big part, I mean, like what's the Southeastern, the Jason Isbell record? I think that happens a lot on that record where he'll be singing and it sounds real close, and I'm not sure how they did. Someone told me he recorded a lot of vocals in his kitchen for that record. Wow. I know "Cover Me Up" apparently was like all performed in the kitchen. Really? I don't know if I can't validate if that's true or not, but I would believe it. Yeah. And then like that, when it sings loud, like when you sing loud, then you start to hear the excitement of the room and all this, and it's all kind of getting gently evened out to bring out more of the room. So I think just to prove that thesis, like here, I'm going to listen solo. Is that okay if I listen solo? I know that's tough. Okay, let me shut off all the reverb. Okay.
We made
the take. Get ready.
By the open blue, I'll sing a sunset tune for two love.
So that's obviously you hear some room, but like that feels close. You know?
Orange blue.
And then when we get louder,
now I'm torn to choose and pay and dues.
Whereas if this is recorded in a dry, dead room and we're doing everything after the fact, for me to achieve that, I got to go in and automate, ascend to a room reverb, and it becomes this very, like, I'm the grand arbiter and wizard of the vibe. Whereas if you are singing and you are hearing this like this, there's nothing going on here, you can play off of it. And you can be like, you know, maybe loudness isn't what I wanted, but I want to hear more room on this so I can, like, look away a little bit and sing a little louder, and it becomes another instrument that you are performing, and ultimately it's going to be better for you to perform than me to do it with a mouse later. For a lot of reasons.
It's so fun and appealing. Like you said, it looks at like your performance with the microphone as an instrument itself, and I think that's so different from like the music that we grew up playing and recording, style recording that we grew up doing, where it was like perfection, every note has to be perfect, and you know, to have that like freedom of like, you know, I can look away at points, I can move, and that is intentional. It's not wrong. Bad.
And you have authority over this final sound. I think, you know, we're all close enough in age that, like, when I grew up and every, you know, sort of the advent of digital recording when I was in bands in high school, and it was just like this wanting to defer all these decisions till later because you can, which was an amazing thing. It was like, oh, we're not stuck to a tape machine anymore, and I can have infinite tracks, and like, let's save all these decisions till later so we can just make it so perfect. And I think what ended up happening for me is, and I experience this sometimes with bands that sort of expect to record that way, it's like being the person at the computer behind the console is like this deified gatekeeper of how things are going to sound, whereas like in reality, no matter what, the person performing the thing is dictating so much more about how it sounds than I ever possibly could. I like to think of what I'm doing as like framing it, or like, you know, putting a lens through it. But this is such a beautiful like expression of like a more ownership too, where it's like, no, I don't get to go later and choose these delay throws or reverb throws. Like, you are performing it, and even if it's less perfect, maybe the net result is better. You know? So I loved that, and I've actually used this. I think this is probably the first time I've done it. I've used it a couple other times as a useful tool. The big thing that I think someone might be afraid of, like who's listening to this that does record, is, you know, the further away you get, usually things sound thinner and lack like the big beefy low end. So the fact that I'm using a mic that has a really good low frequency response helps a lot. But I just would, I guess, maybe encourage people to not be so afraid to have things further from a mic. Like there are ways you can, and there's more low end there than you think. You know, just by compressing it kind of brings it out. I feel like that was my fear, you know, always, where it's like, well, you got to put the mic really close because I want it to sound huge. And it's like, I don't know, like, because the hugeness of a record is the combination of a lot of things, and not if every single one has this huge, massive low end to it. You kind of have nothing to, you know, it's like a puzzle.
Totally.
But let's get into this dual vocal thing. So here's the two vocals together. I think one's lower and one's higher, and you kind of hear it.
At first glance in your room, heard it in a lullaby tune. Sirens sang over you.
And I think I had this Sound Toys plugin, which basically does a similar thing to the Eventide trick. We did analog with the Nashville, and it's like pretty petty, like the lower vocal. When you put this, I think this was on when I opened the session.
At first glance in your room.
But it's spreading it out, so it kind of gives a hug to the middle vocal. I don't know if Tim did this on the mix.
At first glance in your room, heard it in a lullaby tune.
Kind of as if you doubled it, except there's just one voice,
Right.
you know, and it's kind of
So
like,
cool.
you know, middle is the high one, other one's on the side.
It's just weird that style. It's just like every, I guess, word is like you think traditionally like a harmony just gonna be like thirds across the board or whatever, but it goes to a third to a fifth, and then like the low part becomes the third. It just like it doesn't make any sense, but it does in this context.
Yeah.
I think it's just very interesting.
I love when you get to the more busy rhythmic phrase here.
When the world is so skewed, spotlight in the dark, you're breaking through. Need the orange blue, but only if you're watching it too.
It becomes a fourth
Yeah,
there.
Yep. So cool.
So neat. Yeah, it's like two singable melodies.
Yep.
Really cool. And then I'm a huge sucker. This right here is like your classic third above harmony, which you got to give the people what they want.
French press, shut out all the darkness, kiss away the weekend.
There's a reason that it's used a lot. It's very
That's what I mean.
satisfying.
It's
Sounds good.
Intentional, like this just has to be this way.
And then I'm a sucker for which I think I pushed a couple times for, the harmony below the lead vocal.
Yeah.
I think it does a nice thing sometimes where it just, you don't even notice it, but it just adds weight.
Yeah.
Instead of sounding like, oh, there's another person singing, you know?
Right.
So like here I think we...
Oh,
No, this is a double.
orange blue.
This is the only moment that's doubled on the song, and I think it's with our fun, this shit, and, you know, this whole moment just...
Orange blue, sunset view.
Double vocal here kind of like implies to the listener.
There's no
it's gonna
hope.
be somewhere
Yeah.
different, you know?
Yeah, I feel this moment is like a calm
Yeah.
for maybe not the storm, but something. But then in this
Wave.
this extended part here, then we add this low harmony, which I just, like I said, I'm a sucker for it. I love the way it sits.
Read the morning news, a short and fuse.
It mimics what the whirly is providing.
Yes.
This sound.
Yes. And it's like, na, na. It's more the roots of what's happening, because you're playing like an inverted one, like a B, G
Yeah.
over B,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
then a C, and the low vocal's kind of almost like a rhythm guitar.
Yeah.
You know, it's like...
Don't touch you and paying you.
I don't know if that's the same.
Morning news.
Yeah, really neat. And that's about it for harmonies on the song. It's not a crazy vocal arrangement. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Other than that, like we just had that sweet little harmony there. This, I don't know if there's too much else going on. I would like to listen to the master real quick and see how the two vocal thing is presented, because when I send stuff out to mix, you know, if there's things that are super essential, like that were a plugin, I'll commit it. But like vocal effects and stuff, obviously I want to let the person mixing it have the ability to change or undo that. So I don't think I sent it with that micro shift on it, but let's listen. I'm ready to be surprised.
At first glance in your room, heard it in a lullaby tune. Sirens sang over you, when nothing is everything to do.
Yeah, Yeah, they sound to me like they're just panned a little bit opposite each other, no stereo, which kind of maybe is a more successful framing of the dual lead vocal. Yeah. I think that then we got to mix so long ago, but I remember hearing some things being like, I like this better than how we were kind of mocking it up. Yeah, sounds nice, and it kind of really makes it that you can pay attention to either, you know. That's cool. I mean, yeah, I think Tim did a great job mixing this.
Is there no tambourine for this section?
There's the tambourine on the snare hits.
Right.
There's no shaken tambourine. Is there?
Do you know that, like, were there beads on the cymbal when you were doing this?
There might have been.
Maybe.
There's a good chance.
The vibe definitely.
I say you want to punch it now.
We could always put that in.
Yeah.
I think the combination of this shaker with the tambourine hits kind of sounds like one of those, like.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's kind of evoking that movement. Yeah, I don't. So the master that I have in here is what is not currently at the time of filming this, but maybe on the internet. So I'm just saying, as far as doing a playthrough of the song,
we can
hopefully it will be.
This will be out. Right?
Yeah. This will be out. Yeah.
Check it out now on Spotify.
Imagine if we dropped the behind the recording
before the song comes out.
Should be punk.
Should we do that? Should you want to listen through it once and we'll kind of like wrap with that?
Yeah, we'll just chill.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, let's listen to the master. I'm ready.
And this is song two-loader. Here.
I had my last ginger chew after a week with you, love. By the open blue, I'll sing a sunset tune for two, love. Now we're stuck inside this cage with memories on replay. Times when skies were not so gray, a mirror in a frame. Orange, blue, sunset view. There's no orange, blue without you. Toast, bread, avocado tastes best waking up in your bed. French press, shut out all the darkness, kiss away the weekend. Orange, blue, sunset view. There's no orange, blue without you. Read the morning news, a short and fuse. Now I'm torn to choose and pay and lose. At first glance in your room, heard it a lot about you. Science
Oh yeah, that's great.
Sick. Yeah, I just remember too. We didn't have that pause in the B section or whatever. The like we're off on the one.
Yeah, that was your idea.
That was your idea.
That was probably one of the pre.
And I feel like
moves.
the whole album leads up to that moment.
Yeah.
For me personally, like I can't believe we didn't have that before.
Right?
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, that and then something in Waiting on Me. We added something similar in the bridge of that, like that.
Yeah.
Those little things, I think. Yeah.
Which ever since we did that session, anytime we were writing stuff, I'm always like, where can we put a pause?
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, what would Erik do?
Yeah.
You know, like that's always how I'm thinking about shit now.
I think it was enough for those like pinnacle moments when it feels like the same thing 4 times. Like just changing something about one goes a long way.
It's like it's a big moment.
Yeah.
And it's very drum led. It's like very like moments like that. They feel bandy, you know, instead of feeling like something that necessarily like the songwriter would have thought of when they were writing it with an acoustic guitar. It feels like the energy of like, you know, like we should do something on this one and like let's try a few things. And I think that, especially like referencing Tom Petty and even Raylan Baxter and like kind of neo vintage stuff, like there's those moments in like bridges and stuff where the drum does a fill between all the parts, like that like kind of old style where it's like the fill is not just there to be flashy or do anything. It's like functional. It's like chaos together.
Exactly.
And the moments like that just I think are real nice and go a long way. I also heard you did this really cool thing with your hi-hat. That I was.
Well, I mean, it is Hi-Hat Joe, so.
In the flesh.
Do you remember that, Erik?
I do.
I love that because it's the loudest thing in the mix for some reason.
It's so cool.
Yeah.
And we can now confirm that that's not some trickery. Like, that is just a human being.
That really happened.
Stepping on it tight.
That whatever you call that is like the first thing I think of when I think of Joe's style of drumming. It's just this like this little like grab.
Was it this song of My Dad Was There?
No, we're doing Waiting on Me.
Was it Waiting on Me? Okay.
But I love this song. I think it's sonically the best sounding, in my opinion, on the entire album.
Yeah.
Everything just cuts through clearly. I think it's like one of my best takes, performances on
Same
record.
for me on the bass.
Yeah.
I think we all feel that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, even like I said from the beginning, like the second I got this demo, I'm like, this is the best song on the album. No question.
I know when you had asked, we were thinking about this or Alpenglow. I think Alpenglow would have been a lot more nerdy stuff, but this I think like is such a perfect example of like great performances and like more minimalist than Alpenglow. Not particularly minimalist for the album, but more like like all these things, if you take one away, it's not right. And it being there is like so important.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, that's cool.
Before we wrap, I was curious, just Kris, do you have anything you want to say? Kris wasn't a part of the recording process, but Kris has been in the band.
Be here.
Kris has been in the band for about a year now. He's been playing these songs.
I joined very late in the game, so this is like my first time hearing all these little details, and it's fascinating, and it's beautiful how much love and thought was put into every little thing.
Oh, hell
And
yeah.
it's fun to play it live. We're going to bring it to the world.
Yeah, we can all say that there was a lot of love and thought put into every single decision made on the record. So, which is the only thing I'm interested in being a part of. So, thank y'all for letting me participate in it.
Of course.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Cool. Wrap.
Yeah.
One more
Where
clap.
can they listen to it?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
The internet.
There's music there.
Out now.
There's
Yeah.
music there.
Check us out. The music video is live on Take This to Heart